Holy cow. Jeez. All right, so bell ringer for today. Describe the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885. What did this conference intend to do? Detail what social Darwinism is. There you go. You guys get working on that. Give you another minute to finish up here. We'll go over it. All right, so let's go over this real quick, guys. So Berlin Conference, 1884, 1885. What was it all about? What was it all about? Tyler, what was it all about? Okay, all right, where at? Okay, good. So these European countries are all coming together and they are trying to try to figure out where all these territories who will belong to, right? Good, good. And where was the conference? Berlin, right? Where's Berlin at? Alice? Germany, good. So when it came down to running this conference, his name was Otto von Bismarck. So make sure you remember that name. We will be talking about him quite a bit, building up into World War One and how Germany becomes this dominant power. We already know Germany is responsible for what? The second wave of the Industrial Revolution, right? So all these advancements are really coming out of and originating out of Germany at this time. And when you look at it at a comparative basis, we have the United States and Germany rising as world powers right at the same time. Okay, right at the same time. So with the Berlin Conference, I know I showed that political cartoon yesterday, and it looked like Otto von Bismarck. He was at a dinner table, right? And he was cutting up a big cake, and on the cake it said Africa. And as he was cutting up the pieces of the cake, he was handing them out to these European countries, right? Who was not at that table though? Chloe, who's not at that table? That political cartoon activity we went over yesterday. So the European countries were there. All right, yeah. So, well, yeah, the African tribesmen, right? Okay, so good job. So no African tribes were even a part of this conversation, the dispute, the taking of these territories, and we talked a little bit about the atrocities as well of what was going on, what was occurring in these territories in Africa. We mentioned a little bit about King Leopold II cutting and slicing off these individuals' arms to show his power over these individuals, right? These African indigenous people. And again, extracting resources from these territories, bringing them up to the mainland to make a finalized good out of it and make huge sums of profit, right? Large profits off of these items, these raw materials, these resources. Didn't have to pay for the labor whatsoever. Establishing military bases all throughout Africa, all these European countries. Okay. And what is that term called where they're extracting these resources from these territories and making finalized goods out of these resources in their home base? What is that called? And their home country. Brian? Extractive economies. Good job. Good job. Awesome. So again, that game that you played on Monday, or was it Tuesday? I think it was Monday. I don't know. I can't remember now for the life of me. But anyway, with the Berlin Conference, that was representing you scrambling for Africa, you throwing the dice and trying to choose and pick what territories will belong to you. Okay. Good. Is there any questions on the Berlin Conference? Yeah, so that piggybacks right into this next term here, social Darwinism. What is that? What is social Darwinism? Alice? Can you speak up a little bit? Sorry. Social Darwinism theory that people are subject to the same laws as okay, all right, yeah. So he's relating. Well, this man named Herbert Spencer. He was a sociologist. Okay, during this time of industrialization in Europe and during this time of industrialization in America, and he's relating these European countries going through these stages of this evolutionary process, where they're becoming dominant, where they're competing against one another in these atmospheres, in these environments, right? And he picks this idea of survival of the fittest. The strongest will survive. And the only way they're going to survive is by what? What do they need to do, these European countries? Brady, what do these European countries need to do in order to survive and compete with one another? What must they do? These European countries, in order to survive, in order to be sufficient in this environment in Europe where industrialization is taking hold, what must they do? Let's say Germany. What must they do to compete with Great Britain? They need to build up what? What must they need? What do they need to build up? Need help on it? Roy?
Military.
They're military. Yeah, good job. They need to expand their military. They need to put a lot of effort and time into coming up with these new forms of weaponry that are advanced, that are modern. Good. And what else do they need to do? This was your first term on your vocab list. They need to what? Be starts with an I. Roy? Yeah, they need to be imperialistic, right? They need to expand past their own borders. They need to try to take over these lands for their raw materials, for their resources, and expand their power. Good. Does that make sense, guys? Yeah? Okay, good. All right, terms for today. Here we go. We got Alfred T. Mahan, Matthew Perry, gunboat diplomacy, and the Great White Fleet. There you go. I'll give you some time to work on these terms. What's up, Al? Oh, that was your hiccup. Okay. Mm-hmm. No, we don't want Matthew Perry from Friends. You're right. We don't want Chandler from Friends. Oh, do you like Friends back there, Chloe? It is a good show, but that's not what I'm looking for. I forgot to mention that before you started working.
Matthew C. Perry.
Oh, or you could put Commodore Matthew Perry, right? The naval captain here. Why are we talking about Friends in here? All right, one more minute to finish up. We're going to move on here. Brian, going to see Venom 2 tonight? No. Why not? Are you kidding? You like subpar video games, though? Loves them. You don't like movies. Wow. What? Bathroom? You can. I want to talk to you, though. Oh, about what? You go to the bathroom. We'll talk later.
About wrestling?
Yeah. Come on, man. All right, let's go over this, guys. Alfred T. Mahan. What do we got? What do we got? Roy, what do you have for Alfred T. Mahan?
U.S. naval officer and historian who was highly influential exponent of sea power in the late 19th and early 20th century.
Yeah, good job. Good job. So this man was very influential for the United States Navy. Why is it important for the U.S. to build up their Navy? Why is it important? Especially during this time with imperialism, with expanding past our borders. Why is it important, Roy?
The oceans on both sides.
Yeah, right. The only way we can expand is by our naval fleet, right? In order to try to be a superior military power that ranks with the world, especially these European countries, we need to expand our military fleet, our naval fleet, okay? And as we're imperializing these areas, let's say in the Caribbean Sea, out in the Pacific Ocean, we need to make sure that we can build up our military, our Navy, okay? Have this strong Navy to extract these resources, protect these resources, getting back to the homeland to make finalized goods. And also, when or if we ever get involved with a war, we need to make sure we can protect our supplies, our armaments going to Europe, right? Okay, when we get to World War I, we'll talk about the Atlantic battles, okay, how that was significant for the United States to travel a lot of this cargo, a lot of shipment, a lot of these materials, supplies over to Europe to benefit the Allied powers. The only way we can do that is with a strong Navy. Now, let's face it, Great Britain, they're known for their Navy, right? There's a reason why they took over 70% of the world's landmass through their imperialistic efforts, their empire. And that's because they had a strong Navy. They're a small island, right? Small island. The only way that they can be superior is by expanding their Navy. Good, good, good. Awesome. All right, so Alfred T. Mahan, again, he's noted for expanding the U.S. Navy. By 1900, the United States will have the third largest Navy, okay? And we all know, after World War II, we still today have the strongest Navy. It's not even close. It's not even in comparison with the next country, which is Japan. And Japan, we're going to talk about with Matthew Perry. Okay, interesting enough. We know Japan is also an island. Wow, crazy. Matthew Perry, what do we have? Well, all right, yeah. So Matthew Perry, not Chandler from Friends, but Matthew Perry for opening up trade with Japan to expand the United States influence to these Asian markets. Okay, and the only reason we've done that is because of our strong Navy. Okay, our goal was to try to open up trade with these Asian countries to expand our market, to expand our influence, and overall become a world power. If we can control the Western Hemisphere, all these Pacific islands, and let's face it, at that time, these Asian countries, they didn't really have a comparable military to the United States or these European countries. So this was really all ours for the taking. Okay, the only way we can do that is with our Navy. So Matthew Perry, make sure you guys note that he is famous for opening trade with Japan. For 400 years, Japan closed their doors, closed their borders, and by 1850, Matthew Perry comes around with a strong naval fleet and opens up trade. Awesome, right? Good. Gunboat diplomacy. This falls under Matthew Perry here. What do we have? Chloe, what do you got for gunboat diplomacy? You have this one?
displays of naval power and flying or
It-
terms not be agreeable to this superior.
All right, good job. So in all reality, gunboat diplomacy is just a naval fleet with the power, the capabilities of threatening another country or territory for its needs. So we're going to utilize this navy that we have, especially under Matthew Perry, to go over to Japan and threaten them to open up their borders. If they don't, well, they're going to get destroyed. Why? Because our naval fleet is just way far superior than theirs. And our military is going to be utilized to open up trade, open up assets for the United States to expand its world power. So gunboat diplomacy literally means threatening an opposition for the betterment of, right, of your country. Pretty crazy stuff, right? Oh man. Finally, the Great White Fleet. What do we have? Alice, go ahead. Okay, yeah, the Great White Fleet. This was this was Teddy Roosevelt's idea of flaunting the U.S. Navy to the rest of the world, and he did this by painting 16 battleships of the U.S. Navy and sailing them literally across the world, stopping at many locations, specifically up in Europe. Okay, sailing through the Mediterranean Sea, through Suez Canal. And let's face it, if you're anybody traveling at that time, you're going through the Suez Canal. So he takes all these battleships all the way across. He starts in Virginia, all the way across the Atlantic Ocean, stops in a couple key places here in Europe, goes through the Mediterranean, goes through the Suez Canal, travels all throughout Asia, pinpointing at different spots, comes all the way back around, stops on the western coast, comes all the way down through Central America, South America, and back up to Virginia. Pretty crazy stuff, right? Yeah, so he was trying to show the rest of the world what type of naval fleet America's had. And in all reality, this was just to flex his arms again, trying to show the world what the United States is capable of. And that no longer are we just a laughing matter when it comes to our naval fleet. And by, like I said, the 1900s, we had the third largest navy in the world. And just the arrogance, right? Painting all these ships white so they really stick out for the people seeing these naval ships coming all around the world. Do you think it cost a pretty penny? Oh yeah, that was a lot of fuel to travel across the world. But again, this was his goal. This was his idea, Teddy Roosevelt's, to show the world what we had, what we acquired with our naval fleet, and really the progression of our Navy. Yeah, it costs a lot of money, but even today you still see military parades. More so, you see them in North Korea, in China, to show the world what type of military they have and their advancements. At that time in the 1900s, these European countries had no clue what the U.S. was capable of. And the Great White Fleet, their trip, 43,000 miles, was really just significant in showing the world what we had. Alice, what's up? Huh? I think it took under just a little over a year, I think it was. Yeah, it's pretty long trip. All right, so real quick, guys, I want to talk about why the U.S. is looking for imperialistic gains. Okay, we all know Europe expanding down to Africa. Well, why does America want to get involved with this? But we'll talk about these few individuals today. The reasons for U.S. imperialism. Number one, European countries started doing it first. Plain and simple, right? European countries were expanding down to Africa. That Berlin Conference, we already talked about that quite a bit. And the United States, the only way that they can compete at the world level is if they are imperialistic as well, specifically in the Western Hemisphere, though. Okay, specifically the Western Hemisphere. So, like I mentioned, the Monroe Doctrine, our goal was to control really half of the world and the resources, raw materials in the Western Hemisphere. We actually did acquire territory in Africa, Sierra Leone. Nothing big or anything like that, but as these European countries are expanding into Africa, we actually had a small territory in Africa as well. Interesting enough. So European countries doing it first. Scramble for Africa, Berlin Conference. The only way U.S. can compete is if we imperialize as well. Two, U.S. wanted raw materials in foreign countries. Big one, sugar, right? Sugar is a big raw material resource that the United States wanted to try to acquire. And throughout this time in the early 1900s, after the Spanish-American War, acquiring many of these territories out in the Pacific and the Caribbean Sea, we really monopolized sugar, and everybody wanted it. Okay, so if the United States is the only country that is selling or trading sugar, what does that mean? Well, we can set the prices to whatever we want, right? So we profit heavily off of this raw material, this resource. Can you find it in mainland United States? No. Continental United States? Not really. Maybe in the bottom portions of Florida, but for the most part, you'll see it Cuba, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, Guam, the Philippines, and we made sure we monopolize off that resource. All right, and we already talked about extractive economies, right? Yeah, so we're extracting these materials, these resources, bring it back to homeland to make finalized goods out of these products and profiting heavy off of them. Here's a picture of Africa. We went over that yesterday, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but it just shows that the only way the US can compete at the world level is if we imperialize these lands, these territories, specifically in the Western Hemisphere as well. Right? We can't fall behind to these European countries. We need to go through this stage, okay, really at the same time. Morally, ethically correct? No. But when it came to world dominance, world power, we had to go through this stage. Unfortunate, I know. And we went through some examples yesterday with extracting resources and raw materials. All right, yeah, so other resources and raw materials. And finally, the third reason was to establish military bases. Okay, establishing military bases all throughout in this time period, in the Caribbean Sea, out into the Pacific, okay, with Hawaii, we all know Pearl Harbor, establishing military bases here in the Philippines, keeping an eye on our Asian, on these Asian countries, making sure our assets are protected, these resources are protected here in Asia. And we had somewhat of an alliance with Japan. Somewhat of an alliance with Japan. 1907, one of the key reasons why the Great White Fleet took off was because Japan was trying to overstep their taking. All right? They were trying to overstep some of their boundaries here. And the US wanted to keep them, hey, relax here, right? Keep them at bay. But today, we all know that the United States, with their military bases, with their naval superiority, okay, with their military superiority, the technology we have, the advancements we have, it's really uncomparable to any other country, right? Our advancements are just blows anybody else out of the water. It's not even close. So like I mentioned, after World War II, we would never see second place when it came to military power. Yeah, the Cold War, we went through that, but we're always somewhat a step ahead of the opposition. All right, so key people, like I mentioned, we have Alfred T. Mahan. And again, his idea was, well, the only way we can compete at the world stage is if we advance our Navy. And the only way we can become an imperialistic country is if our Navy is suited and equipped to travel these long distances, extract these resources and raw materials, and to try to keep other countries understanding of what type of military power the United States has. And the only way we can do that is with a strong Navy. Why was Great Britain so successful in conquering, literally colonizing, imperializing all these lands and territories? Their Navy. Germany, when we get to World War I, they go through a naval arms race with Great Britain. The way they were successful, yeah, their land military, but their Navy as well. What's up, Chloe? Yeah, go ahead. So Alfred T. Mahan suggested to many of the administrators in the United States, these presidents, saying, hey, we need to make sure our Navy is up to par with these European countries. If not, well, we could get attacked, right? We need to make sure we are protected and that we would never fight a war on our homeland. The only way we can do that and prevent that from happening is by creating a strong Navy, setting up and establishing military bases to protect ourselves from outside invaders. So by 1900, the US had third largest Navy in the world. Pretty amazing how quick and how fast we shifted from the ironclads during the Civil War to now these dreadnoughts, these battleships that are literally what modern day battleships look like today. Just in a short 40, 35, 40 years. So by 1900, Great Britain was number one. Who do you think was number two? If we were three, who was two? Roy? Germany. Good job. Good job. Easy way to remember that first wave industrial revolution occurred where? Great Britain. Where the second wave occurred? Germany. And look at us in third by 1900. Like I mentioned, after World War II, we'll never see second place. Even today, we're so far ahead of everybody else when it comes to naval superiority. It's really unmatched. All right, then finally, Matthew Perry. Not Chandler, right? Not Chandler. But Matthew Perry, his famous expedition to Japan, he utilized gunboat diplomacy to open up trade with Japan. And for 400 years, Japan closed their borders from the rest of the world. Okay, ever since the age of exploration. And Japan thought, well, we see what's going on in China with the Boxer Rebellion. We see what type of influences these European countries are placing on these Asian countries here in Southeast Asia, moving up into China. And Japan wanted nothing of that. And what helped them was, well, they're an island, right? They're an island. So they could close their borders off. They could equip themselves to protect themselves from any outside invaders. So again, that happened ever since the 1400s. They shut themselves off from the rest of the world until Matthew Perry comes with these naval ships. Okay. And he literally parks himself into Tokyo Bay and he uses his naval force to threaten Japan, to show fear tactics to Japan. It's like, hey, if you guys don't open up trade, well, we're going to blow you away. Okay. And the Japanese saw these new advancements, these new modern battleships, and there they are with wooden ships with sails. Okay, here we are with steam-powered engines. Okay, we have these artillery cannons placed all across the decks of these battleships, equipped with armor. And Japan knew right then and there, well, if we want to try to become a dominant power, we need to advance. We can't just sit in the past here. They haven't advanced since the 1400s, right? So Japan sees this as a bargaining tool. Say, hey, we'll open up our trade with you, our ports with you, as long as you incorporate industrialization, these new modern techniques and advancements into our own country. So Japan takes these new ideas, these new modern tactics and advancements with industrialization, and they become the most dominant Asian country in the world. Not even close. Not even close. And by the start of World War II, well, who do we fight in World War II in the Pacific? Japan, right? So many people say, oh, we created our own enemy here. Unbelievable, right? Unbelievable. And like I mentioned with the Great White Fleet, when Teddy Roosevelt sails these ships all across the world, one of his goals was to make sure Japan knew our naval fleet was so far superior than theirs. Okay. All right. So Matthew Perry, again, key takeaways, make sure you know he's the person to open up trade with Japan. And this allows the United States to have a docking area to China, to the rest of these Pacific Islands, moving back to the United States. Okay. And Japan, what they get from it, well, modernization. And eventually we will fight them in World War II. Pretty crazy stuff, right? Pretty crazy stuff. Oh, another key point. Matthew Perry got permission to build the Pearl Harbor Naval Base. And who attacks at Pearl Harbor? Japan. Oh my gosh. What is going on here? Crazy. Jeez. Well, just coming back and smacking us here. Oh, there's Chandler from Friends, Matthew Perry. Oh, all right. There you go. Okay, I got a short video for you. Just on the Great White Fleet. I think you guys will enjoy it. Teddy Roosevelt painting these naval ships white, really to stick out.